Welcome to the Multithreaded Income Podcast, the definitive podcast for savvy professionals who refuse to be bottlenecked by a single revenue stream. I'm your host, Kevin Griffin, and in this space, we explore, dissect, and analyze the strategies that turn your expertise into multiple optimized income streams. If you believe that your knowledge and skills should be leveraged in more ways than just one, you're in the right place. Now, in each episode, I talk to folks just like you and me who are exploring multi-threaded income on their own terms. Don't forget to sign up with us on social media for updates, exclusive content, and to just continue this conversation. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Welcome back to the show, everyone. I am joined today by my very good friend, David Neal. How are you today, David?
Hey, Kevin, I am doing great. Thank you for having me on your show.
Absolutely. I know I had wanted to get you on the show. I think we were chatting randomly a couple weeks ago, and I wasn't telling anyone that we were starting this podcast. And I was talking to you about some of the drawing work you had done and realized, all right, David's a perfect person to come talk about multi-threaded income because you're doing it in I would say a less conventional way than a lot of technologists think about multiple threads of income. Um, so let's start with the very beginning. David, tell us a little bit about yourself, your origin story. How'd you get to where you are today?
Well, let's see. I was born, I don't know. Maybe don't need to go back that far. But
It was a warm summer day.
yes, um, when I was young, I had the most amazing um, thing happen. Um, I didn't grow up in you know, a well-off family or anything like that. We lived in an area where there were a lot of dirt roads still, unpaved roads. But every year we would go around Thanksgiving and spend Thanksgiving Day with some family close to Atlanta. And that was my aunt and uncle's house. And one Thanksgiving, uh, many moons ago, I think it was 1982, because I've talked about this story in some of the talks that I've given. Um, I had this fateful experience of playing with uh, a TRS-80 color computer that was my cousin's, and I don't know that I spent how much time I spent at the computer, but I know it made an impression on my uncle. And then sometime later, we get a phone call, and we got in the car and we drove to my aunt and uncle's house a couple hours away, and they had a cardboard box for me that had the TRS-80, a cassette drive, a floppy drive, and a dot matrix printer, and some software and a book on Color Basic. And I was a young kid at the time. I was just interested in the games and stuff you could do on it. But that really was, looking back, the catalyst that got me interested in computers. And I went from that to a Commodore 64, which I used through high school and college. And when I got to college, I wanted to be a musician. I wasn't really thinking about tech or anything for my career. So I was just taking some classes to try to work toward a degree. I started in drafting. I thought, well, that sounds like it might be fun. And then I switched to business administration because I didn't know what I was going to do. And I took a class, an accounting class. And in this accounting class, they were teaching, the teacher was using Lotus 123. And, this was before Windows and all that stuff. So no one knew how to use computers. No one knew how to use Lotus 123. The teacher was fairly young, and she didn't know how to use it either. It was just part of this curriculum that they were starting to use at the college. And I ended up helping everyone with the assignments. I was teaching other people how to use this software, because it was like, well, this is a no-brainer. I work on my computer all the time. This is easy. And it was that moment that I kind of realized, well, every time I have touched a computer, whether it be in my drafting class, there was some CAD stuff, or there was a lab, a computer lab at the school that, really piqued my interest. Like, man, every time I touch a computer, I have a good time. Maybe I should try a computer class and see what that's like. So I took basic, and it was turbo basic, I believe. And I knew right away this is what I wanted to do. And I took some Pascal and C and some other things. And I ended up with an associate's degree in computer science. I changed my major. But it was quite a while before I could actually use my programming, or, have opportunities to do any programming. So my origin story, to make a long story longer, is I went to work in customer support. I went to work for a temp agency that was like manning telephones, to talk to, you know, people about, the software that they were running. I ended up, um, taking a full-time job at a software company as a, tech support supervisor. And, is in that, they were using Pascal, and, they later, migrated to Delphi, but I was able to use my programming skills to automate some things in tech support. I was able to create some programs that were utilities, and I knew that's what I wanted to do long term. I just was looking for the right opportunity. All along the way, I was still very interested in music. I ended up taking a job in the Nashville area and moving to Nashville. Ended up living in Nashville for 20 years. But eventually a break came when I was able to move from kind of like IT stuff into full-time programming. And the web was born, and I started doing web applications in the 90s, and um, yeah, rest is kind of history.
Yeah, I always love talking to folks who did computing back in the 80s because brings back so many memories for me. Now, when you were playing with your TRS 80 in 82, I wasn't even born yet. It's amazing because I had very similar experiences much later in the 80s when I was a younger boy and getting my first computer. I remember Lotus 123. Actually, because I never used it in pre-Windows days. I used the version that was in Windows.
Mhm.
But I remember that was all you had for what spreadsheets and
Yeah.
all that good stuff. That is quite the flashback for where you are now. So probably the big reason that we bring folks like you on the podcast is that you're using your talents in a variety of different way. You currently have a full-time job that you're doing, but then you have other work you do on the side. And maybe for everyone listening who doesn't go deep into your personal life, what other side projects do you have going on except uh what other side projects do you have besides your main job?
Yeah. Well, today, the most of my work outside of my primary job is illustrations. I do, um, avatars for folks for like profiles and social media. I do design work for anything and everything between from book covers and illustrations that go into books and articles and content, to uh, designing stickers and T-shirts. I work with events, and I do, just about most types of illustration and graphic art design work. Um, and that's something that's only uh, been going on now for about 5 years.
Well, let's back up a little then. So that's a really creative skill to have. And you hadn't really talked about that during your origin story. You talked about doing computers, you talked about music. How do you find yourself with the talent of being able to draw?
Yeah. Well, a little bit more origin story. So when I was a kid, I doodled a lot. I doodled on um my spelling tests or different things in school. I know I got in trouble for some of that. I had one teacher who was really awesome and she encouraged it, and I had another teacher who, got upset whenever I doodled in class or doodled on any papers. So it was, it was some conflict there. But once I got to high school, I was more interested in music, and I was playing guitar, and I was in marching band and school, and played trumpet and all that kind of stuff. So I stopped drawing, and I didn't draw at all for over 20, 30 years. The only drawing I ever did was maybe a smiley face or a silly looking cartoon face on my kids' birthday cards or something like that. I'm in tech. I'm a software developer. I'm doing web applications. Work for a bunch of different startup companies and companies around the Nashville area. I started doing. I started working from home. 20 years ago. Um, Either part time or full time, depending on the projects I was doing. And I went to work for a startup company that was based in Dallas that did. So I was working from home full time long before, most people did. And I was getting kind of burned out on the work from home stuff. Uh, I didn't mind being at home. It was just, I was so disconnected and not, uh, just not really connected with the people that I worked with. I was just doing work and, still having challenges. But um, I heard folks talking about a conference that was local, and I had previously gone to some events like Tech Ed and the Microsoft PDC. I was at the Microsoft PDC in Orlando in 2000, where they announced .NET and ASP.NET and C Sharp. They gave everybody at that conference a little book called Presenting C Sharp. And being the nerd that I am, I took that back to the hotel with me and I read it cover to cover. It wasn't very big, but at the time I was thinking about jumping over to Java, and the C Sharp was like, oh, this is it. This is what I want to do. And so I went from being a VB ASP developer to C Sharp and ASP.NET. Did that for a long time. But anyway, back to my burnout and being disconnected. I went to a local conference. Back then it was DevLink that was in Nashville, Tennessee.
I
And
miss that
it's
conference so much
one of the
to
best.
this day.
Yeah. It later moved to Chattanooga and was there for several years, but it started in Nashville. I think it was 2008, maybe 2009. And I was just so blown away with the quality of speakers and the sessions. It was just like it met that need that I had to like connect with folks in the tech community, in the developer community. And I kept hearing or what resonated with me was speakers and the organizers of the event talking about, hey, you need to get involved. You need to get connected to your community and, give back to the community. I thought, well, that's what I've been missing. I need to do that. I need to start going to some meetups. And I started going to meetups. One thing led to another. And within a few years, I was helping to run the .NET user group in Nashville, Tennessee. And that led to someone coercing me into giving a talk. And it was awful. I did terrible. I was the worst speaker in speaker history, but it really sparked this interest with me to like, I want to get better at this. I want to do more of this. And I ended up submitting to conferences and speaking at conferences and events all over. And within a few years, I had given hundreds of talks, I suppose. Just became really active in the speaker community. And again, I hit this wall where I was feeling like I wasn't having the impact that I wanted to have with the audiences. I felt I was feeling burned out, and I was ready to take a year off and just rethink my whole life, existential crisis kind of thing. And I came across this video on YouTube by a guy named Dan Rome called Show and Tell, where he was demonstrating how you can use hand drawn illustrations, very simple stick figures, lines, arrows, basic shapes, and how you could use that to create content that was so much more engaging than just bullet points and stock photos on in your slides. And I thought, man, that looks like a lot of fun. I want to try that. I had this talk coming up. It was the 2015 Orlando Code Camp, and I had a talk on Kanban. It was like, well, duh, Kanban is visualizing work. I can use some fun stick figures and visuals to make this, more entertaining and engaging. And I I had an old iPad and a cheap $5 stylus, and I started drawing some art for my slides, and I wouldn't call it art. It was awful. It was literally poorly drawn stick figures and stuff that I could ink out on the iPad. It was frustrating. It took me a long time to create the stuff that I wanted to create, but I fell in love with it. And from that point forward, I started finding ways to combine tech and humor and start drawing more and more, and social media, Twitter specifically, became like my accountability partner. I would try to have a goal of drawing, one or two things a week and posting it on social media. And I get that feedback from people who enjoyed it. And that, just gave me more motivation to keep it drawing these terrible, illustrations. And eventually my skills got better and better the more that I did it, until the point that I was able to, people started asking me, "Hey, can you draw something for me? I'll pay you to draw something for me." I'm like, "Wait, what? I'm just doing this for fun. Give me $5, I guess, buy me a coffee. I'll draw it for you."
Well, let's push a little further into that because I remember when you were starting to do avatars for everyone, and it seemed like there was a point in time on Twitter when Twitter was the big social media platform for everyone, where every other technologist had a David Neal avatar, and, like, I know I have at least 2 or 3 David Neal avatars in my Dropbox in my collection. My son has a David Neal avatar from a very long time ago. Uh, how so you got this group of people throwing money at you to do drawings. How did that kinda spark to do more and more drawing and I guess more importantly, like, monetizing that skill that you have that's not necessarily your day job?
Yeah. So the funny secret to all that is that even though I was getting some interest in some of the drawings that I was doing, and people, I think the first time I made any money on a drawing was I drew this silly thing it was almost a viral thing, on Twitter. But somebody's like, I'll pay for that artwork if you let me print it and hang it in my office. So that was kind of like the first time I made real money, and it was like maybe $40. I started with drawing myself. I drew an avatar for myself that I use in my slides. It's like my intro slide or my about me slide kind of thing in the talks. And I was pretty proud of it. It took me a long time to do it. And then I drew another version of that was, after my skills got better. And then eventually I decided I want to try my hand at drawing someone else. Uh, and the first person I drew and I remember this, was Ray Bango. Ray's at Microsoft, has been at Microsoft more than once. He's currently at Microsoft. But I drew his picture that I found on the internet. And I don't know why. It was just, something about the expression that he was making in the photo or whatever. I thought it would be fun to draw. And I really admired Ray because of his involvement in the community. I had a lot of heroes, people that I was afraid to talk to back, because I thought they were on some other plane or level that was not accessible. He didn't pay me for it. I drew a picture of him and I gave it to him. I sent it to him privately, and he didn't like it. And he sent me another photo. It says, "Hey, can you do this one instead?" And so I took that one and I worked even harder. I don't know how long it took me, but it was stupid, how much time I put into drawing this avatar illustration of his face. And he liked it, and he put it on. He changed his Twitter profile to that illustration, and it was such a rush. It was like, here's one of my heroes, taking something that I created and making it their profile. And he had thousands of followers, which I thought was amazing. And it got some attention. Okay. So I started just drawing for free, a few other people that I admired. And that became my goal, is like, oh, I'm going to use this as my way of progressing. I'm going to get better at this. So I got better, a little bit better and better. And then eventually, the startup company that I was working for, was acquired, and we couldn't tell anybody, but it was, I knew that I was being laid off. Right. And, and I decided on a whim, this was like early December, I posted this totally bogus message on Twitter that, "Hey, I'm running a sale on avatars. 25% off." And I was just, I was totally making it up. Like, I had never charged anybody for an avatar. So I said, okay, 25% off of $40, you can buy an avatar. And this was 2017. And that went nuts. Like, people were buying $25 at a time, these avatars from me. And I had these examples from like free ones that I'd done, as part of this marketing campaign, which, by the way, I know nothing about marketing. I'm still terrible at marketing. That's something we can talk about. But I run this.
For someone who is so bad at marketing, you did pretty well for yourself during that marketing scheme.
Yeah. So I said, I'm running a sale, 25% off. And I was just totally making it up, and I got so many orders that I drew nonstop from like December to like the middle of January, 1st of February. And I made enough money off of that sale that I was able to buy myself a new iPad and um, seems like something else, but yeah, I probably made somewhere around $2,000 total on that sale. And yeah, it really took off. Folks started asking me or wanting to order. And at the beginning, I was just, I didn't know anything about setting up any kind of payment system or anything. I was just using PayPal, giving people my PayPal profile to pay me. Later, I would move to Shopify and use other platforms and make that whole process automated as much as possible. But in the beginning, it was just all manual and a ton of work. And, it really forced me to build my skills pretty quickly, because some people would love what the stuff that I created for them, other people would be like very upset with the quality of the drawings that I was creating, and it was the best I could do at the time. But some people thought it was great. Some people thought it was awful because it was kind of awful.
And art's one of those things where it's very subjective. What one person loves, another person might hate. If you ever gone to an art museum, you look at something, the person goes, "That's a priceless piece of art." You can see the artist's interpretation of refraction and blah blah blah. And someone else goes, "It looks like a dot on the wall. I don't understand
Yeah.
anything about this." It's one of those things. It's all very subjective, but I know I've been super happy with every David Neal avatar I've had, and I'll tell my story about my son. So you and I were at Codestock, Knoxville, Tennessee, and I brought my son with me the one year. He was finally old enough to sit in a session, and we were sitting there, and Dave, you and I were chatting, and I had told Zach about you, and you drew an avatar of Zach, and he would not stop talking about it
Oh,
the entire drive home.
that's awesome.
And I remember the next year we were going back to Codestock, and I told Zach, "Hey, we're going back to Codestock. If you'd like to come," he goes, "Will Mr. David be there?" That was his first question was, because he wanted another avatar of himself, because he had grown his hair out a little
Yeah,
bit, he was a little bit older. He wanted a new picture every year that he saw you.
yeah,
So you definitely left an impression on Zach.
that's awesome.
And I know everyone I've talked to that has a David Neal avatar, they're super happy with him. Now let's talk about some of the bigger projects. You not just avatars, you've gone off to do other larger drawing projects. Can you talk about a bigger project you've done that might have brought in slightly more than what an avatar would?
Yeah, so, um, even early on, folks would come to me and say, "Hey, can you draw, maybe my wh my whole team?" Um, and, so it'd be like an order of, 5 drawings or, as much as 8 or 10. And then I started getting some orders every now and again, I'll get an order just like, "We have a small company. Can you draw everyone in the company?" I'm like, "Okay, it's gonna take a while. Uh, here's what I can do. I can draw maybe 3 or 4 a day, and, we'll work out the details and that kind of thing." Um, and then there's been events where I've drawn speakers, as speaker gifts, as other events have done, like Star Trek has a comic artist that they've engaged every year for years now. And those are really cool. I think mine's mine's back here somewhere on uh, my background. Um, and then there's been like conferences and events and companies who have reached out to me and said, "Hey, can we do, um, will you design some stickers or T-shirts or other types of swag or something like that?" Trying to think. There's been some book projects. There's been, just incrementally, just fun and challenging things that have come along. And there's been some things that I've turned down. It's like, well, that's outside of my expertise, and I'm not interested in learning that particular thing, or that's too big of a project, and I don't have the time, or I can't meet the, the scope of the timeline that you have. Try to be fair, because those are also some hard lessons that I've had to learn, of like taking on too much work or taking on something that's uh, that I'm pretty sure, um, I'm not going to be able to meet what they're expecting. Um, it's been tough to say no, but that's become as I've matured, become a necessary thing. I've had software projects, big projects that or opportunities that have come along. That's like, can you build this for us? We'll pay you well. But I've come to the conclusion that it doesn't matter what you pay me. I mean, that's great, but I can't do that. I can't make that happen for you. And it's been tough because I've learned from failures in the past that I can't say yes to everything, and I can't, uh, you know, I'd rather say no than to either damage myself or my relationships with my family or whatever for the sake of trying to meet this demand.
I think you're leading into one of our other questions is how do you balance all these different things? Like when you were bringing the avatar requests, how did you balance the pipeline of requests with also trying to have your family life? And then I know you were in the process of going from one job to another. How do you deal with all that at the same time and stay sane?
Yeah. Well, earlier in my career, I made a lot of mistakes around that. I felt, I always try to make family my priority in the sense that when I got home from work, I would I would spend dedicated time with my family. We'd always sit down to dinner together. When they got old enough to have cell phones, the cell phones did not, were not at the dinner table. This was family time, and I would spend time, intentional time with my family. Um, you know, After dinner, we'd play games or do whatever. Would always have a bedtime routine of reading a bedtime story and putting them to bed. And I would play a song for them on the guitar that I wrote called the Good Night Song. And this went on for years and years where, once I put the kids in bed, then I got the laptop back out and I would work until whenever. There were, most nights of the week I would tell my wife good night and I would continue to work well past when I should have. And this went on for a long time. I was working for different startup companies, and I thought that's what I had to do to get ahead or get the job done, or it was my responsibility to make this happen. And sometimes that was work that I was doing for the company I worked for, and sometimes it was work that I was doing as on a contract basis. My I have 5 kids. Son number 5, who's now almost 20 years old. I remember sitting in the hospital room with my laptop working on a project, an ASP.NET project for a client, uh, on the other side of the country. I'm like, looking back, I was like, that is so stupid. You know, what in the world was I thinking? Why would I sacrifice when I needed to be there and present for my wife? I was in the room with her. I was still talking to her and stuff, but I was also working. I was like, that's stupid. Don't I really cringe at that so bad because I made so many of those kind of mistakes. So in more recent years, as I've gotten into doing illustration work and things like that, I've tried to really work it in as part of my daily routine. So I'll set aside some dedicated time in the morning before I start my work routine to like do some reading, do some focus on me. Um, and then I'll focus on, doing some illustration work for an hour or so, whatever I can get done in an hour's time. And then I'll switch to, work mode. And, so my constraint is usually, what time can I spend in the mornings on illustration work? And then occasionally, you know, can I spend, a few extra hours on a Saturday to wrap up a bigger project or something like that. But if it's anything more than that, I can't justify, taking time away from either my family or just leisurely activities that are just as valuable and important in the evenings, that it's like, I don't want to sacrifice any of that anymore. I need time for me too.
I agree 100%. I covet my free time, and anything that tries to take me away from my free time really has to go through a filter in order to deem itself necessary. So I respect that 100%.
I like playing Zelda. So the new Tears of the Kingdom, man, I love that game. And I don't want it to like consume my life, but I do want to like, I want to have a couple of hours that I can sit down and not have any regrets or feel any shame or anything about taking that time to just enjoy playing a game.
I bought so this is complete side note. I bought Zelda Tears of the Kingdom fully intending to jump right in, and got consumed with a work project. So I gave it to my son, and my son has already gone through it twice. And I'm I need to restart it because I got so far into it, I had to stop. I don't remember how to play the game anymore. So I'll have to restart so I can learn the controls all over again.
Yeah.
Well, David, as we wrap up, if someone's out there listening to go, I really would love to be a David Neal when I grow up. What piece of advice would you give to that person?
Well, first of all, uh, whatever that thing is that sparks your interest in that, you're like, man, I wish I could do that. Because I remember going to a couple of sessions where people had like artwork or illustrations as part of their slides, and I would look at that and go, wow, that's so amazing. I wish I could do that. I remember going up to a speaker and saying, how did you do that? He said, well, I paid someone to create some artwork for me. I'm like, oh, uh, well, I want to be able to do that, not pay somebody, I don't want to be able to do that myself. Um, so I, my encouragement is that whatever thing that's kind of like makes your heart skip a beat, or is like you see something go, oh wow, that's something I wish I could do that, or whatever. One, you can, um, you you're not going to be Michael Jordan, but you can play basketball and you can have a lot of fun playing basketball. And whatever skill that you want to learn, you can learn it. And you can put the more time you put into it, the better you're going to get. Every new skill that you learn, you're going to be terrible at it for a while. So you've got to give yourself some grace and be patient and keep, making incremental steps toward that thing that you want to do. And that can apply to learning a new programming language, because we all know if we're programmers, we can look back on code that we've written 6 months ago or a year ago and think, what was I thinking? That's awful. Or,
Last week.
last was, well, it's a skill, it's like you get better and better at it. At one point you had to learn a whole new language like C sharp, right? And you were terrible at it at first, but you got better and better at it. And the same goes for like learning a musical instrument, learning a new language. Say you want to learn Spanish or speak Japanese. It's going to be painful and discouraging. But if you keep practicing and doing it more and more, you can do it. If you go to my website, reverendgeek.com, I've got a bunch of posts on my journey as an illustrator, about the books and the videos and different things that I've used that have helped me along the way. Um, and if anyone, if you're interested specifically in illustrations or drawing or music or any of the things that I geek out about, I love talking to folks about that. So feel free to reach out to me, and I'll help encourage you in any way that I can.
Well, fantastic. You kind of jumped the lead. I was going to ask you if you had anything to promote, and you just did it. Is there anything else you like to promote
Oh,
while
sure.
you're here?
Yeah. So, we've talked about avatars and illustrations. In 2021, started a goal of like, I want to draw a dad joke every day for, maybe 30 days. And 30 days turned into 3 months, turned into an entire year. So every day for 2021, I drew a dad joke. And I had so many people encourage me to turn that into other things. And I did. Sometime in 2022, I turned that into a illustrated book of dad jokes. So if you're interested in seeing any of my artwork in IRL, in real life, you can check out that book. It's on Amazon. There's also other types of artwork and commissions, and I speak at conferences um, all over. So be on the watch, mostly on my website and social media. I'll try to keep folks updated on what I'm into and where I'm at.
Sounds great. And I will also promote the book because I remember when you released it, I bought it and my kids stole it. And they took the book, which I was trying to keep in somewhat pristine condition. It is dog eared, and my kids all have favorite days. And it was very much a hit in our house. So
Cool.
I highly recommend it to everyone. All right, David, I appreciate having you here so much. It's been a pleasure, and hopefully we'll have you back at a later time. Kind of give us an update on how the drawing gig is. But with that, thank you so much, David.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
All right, and thank you everyone else for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Multi-Threaded Income Podcast. Thanks for listening to the Multi-Threaded Income Podcast. I've been your host, Kevin Griffin. Please reach out to us on social media at MT Income, wherever you get your socials from. And feel free to join one of our upcoming challenges at multithreadedincome.com. We'll see you next time.